We're finding out about all the great things in Puebla, Mexico. And maybe none of those things are as towering as The Cholula Pyramid is amazing. The site was built more than 2,000 years ago and is the biggest base pyramid on the planet. For hundreds of years, it looked like nothing more than a hill with a chapel on top of it. A peaceful rise in the middle of Mexico. But the biggest pyramid is underneath it. On Earth, hidden in plain sight. And now what scientists have found inside has amazed the world. So the archaeologists really made. These are the tunnels in the pyramid. Yes, that's right. How much of the pyramid has been found so far? Maybe 20%, that's all. Old tunnels, locked rooms, and findings that call into question the very basis of history. What has been sleeping under the ground for thousands of years is moving again. And what they uncovered under Cholula may not only change our comprehension of the past, but change how we see civilization as a whole. The hill that wasn't there. The inhabitants of Cholula have lived there for around 400 years. Thought they lived next to a hill that heaven had touched, softly rising over the flatlands of Puebla, Mexico. It appeared like just another mound of grass, so it didn't seem dangerous. The Iglesia de Nuestra Señora de los Remedios, a modest colonial church, is at the top. People in the area called it El Cerrito, which means little hill. But under that church was not dirt, not rocks, not luck. It was a structure that was the biggest pyramid in the world. So big that it could eat the Great Pyramid of Giza 2 times. Nature didn't do the trick. It was on purpose. As the Spanish conquistadors stormed throughout the world in the early 15th century, they demolished temples and idols wherever they found them in the Americas. They said that the native gods didn't belong in the kingdom of Christ. But when Hernán Cortés and his troops got to Cholula in 1519, they stopped. Here, there was a monument that looked like no other, a mountain that wasn't a mountain. They found cut stone, painted stairways, and other bizarre things under the plants. Tunnels that go down into the ground. Later colonial archives say that they figured out that this hill was a pyramid of huge, far bigger than anything else in Egypt. They were scared since they didn't understand it. The stories say that Spanish priests who went with the conquistadors looked around inside the pyramid before closing it again. They wrote that what they found within went against what the church thought about the start of the world. In their letters, which are now lost or concealed in archives, they said things about wind and fire chambers and heavenly machinery, words too forbidden to be published. They chose to make the pyramid invisible instead of tearing it down. The Spanish colonial officials made a choice that went against their customary pattern of destruction. They would put the old heathen monument beneath faith itself. They told them to cover the sides of the pyramid with dirt and vegetation to hide. It is a mound that grew naturally. They built the brilliant yellow church on top of it. A sparkling Christian crown sits on top of an old indigenous body that is still standing today. From that point on, the plot of the hill became the truth. The outside world was entirely tricked by the deception. Travelers and missionaries may see the church, but they were only asked about it when the building on top of it, the Pyramid of Cholula, was buried by myths, plants, and remorse for generations. But some people did recall it. The Mixtec and Na descendants, living near, who told the story's extremely subtle depictions of the underground rooms, breathing tunnels, and the gods resting under the church's base. They said below that the earth was lit up, shaking on several nights throughout the year. Not many people were daring enough to try it. In actuality, the 19th century. In the late 1800s, scholars started to wonder where the hill came from. The archaeologists incidental. When they dug to be ready to water the plants, they found not only earth but also pottery and stone pieces. The truth didn't finally push that soil away until 1931. The first thing that Mexican archaeologist Ignelio Marina did was go look at the area. And look. None of his instruments gave any readings. There was a hole in the earth. Marquina found out what the Spaniards had kept secret. A pyramid that was almost 450 m long on each side and 66 m height, and it has more space than any other man-made edifice on Earth. People who study history were shocked by what they found out. For a long time, the pyramid that people walked on was really hard to go through. They didn't know about the big memorial that had been there before the coming since they prayed so much at the summit of Jesus. Why did the conquistadors want to keep it a secret? To get rid of a culture that they thought was more sophisticated than theirs? Or to hide a fact that was different from theirs? Viewpoint. Or as some local stories indicate, they might have kept something they couldn't handle. No matter what, one thing was apparent. The hill had never been a hill. It was a conundrum that has been waiting for 2,000 years for someone daring enough to answer it. And when archaeologists finally exposed its stone veins, and what they found inside, a pyramid shocked everyone who believed they knew about the ancient world, made up of civilizations when archaeologist Ignacio Marina started digging up the big mound of Cholula in. He thought there was only one buried temple in the 1930s. What he found instead was a monolith that seems like time itself. One civilization built on top of another, each, leaving behind its own brightness. There wasn't just one Great Pyramid of Cholula. Making. It was a stack of planets, a construction that had been growing for almost 1,000 years. At its center was the first pyramid Fliapatol fake mountain near Natal. First. Built in 300 BCE by the Xiclanca out of adobe and rock from a volcano. It was more of a tool for alignment than a temple of power. It was set up so that its axis pointed to the rising sun at the equinox. A clock in space that was made hundreds of years before written calendars were established. But time kept on. Civilizations came and went. Zapach, Mixtecs, Tolks, and Aztecs all saw in. Cholula is something holy. None of them destroyed what came before. They erected instead, over it putting new shells around older pyramids. The structure grew like a living thing. Each phase keeps the past alive instead of getting rid of it. Cholula turned into not only a religious object, but also a geological record of human desire. Marquina's tunnels sliced across that past like veins. The crimson clay and sharp art were on the outside walls. Of the last mixed epoch, the smooth orange adobe of pre-class lay much deeper. People who build things. Each layer showed a different kind of intelligence, from sundried bricks to stone blocks that fit together almost perfectly. The immensity was impossible to understand. A base that is 450 m long on each side, a height of 66 m, and more than 4.4 million cubic meters of material, which is enough to 66 m tall, with more than 4.4 million cubic meters of material on each side, make it the biggest pyramid in the world by volume. All of it shaped and carried by hands of people. What could be the reason for such hard work? The layers of dirt showed archaeologists altars built according to the stars, staircases that led to the solstice sun, and paintings with snakes, a maze, and heavenly fire. This place wasn't a grave. It was a global map that shows how the past societies understood life, death, and cycles of renewal. The civilizations of Meso were also responsible for the destruction of the ceremonies and old temples. America kept learning about astronomy. The Toltecs changed the way things were aligned based on Venus's orbit. The Aztecs made Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, into a new god of wisdom and resurrection. Centuries later, they consecrated the pyramid to this deity. They said that Cholula was built by giants who had the power to make the heavens show up in the mountains. In 1519, the Spaniards found heresy in the Temple of Knowledge. The natives would be quite angry if it were destroyed. It would be buried. It lost its meaning. They then chose to hide their plans. The dirt and rocks covered the pyramid for hundreds of years, and a church was built on top of it to make it holy. But the archive lived on, even if it was hidden under that hill of faith. Engineers nowadays are still astounded by how accurate it is. It was built without any kind of binding agent or metal. Sections has helped it survive earthquakes and floods with little damage. The middle of the pyramid, which is built up of layers, and it is still stable as if it were genuinely meant to last. The cultures that made it. People say that the Pyramid of Cholula is the most archaeologically rich and interesting place in the Americas, where all the numerous cultures that have ever. People who lived in the area helped develop a new culture. Science, art, religion, all of them gradually blending into a single continuous narrative. But what? What really made this pyramid stand out wasn't only its size or beauty. What was inside? In its hidden heart, a network of tubes that looked like the stars. Themselves, the maze underneath the ground. When archaeologist Ignacio Marina, when he started digging into Cholula, he thought he would find layers of architecture, not revelation. Instead, he found a place below the globe, a huge system of old passages etched with the same level of accuracy as a surgeon cutting through mud brick and volcanic stone. So far, more than 8 kilometers. There are tunnels under the Great Pyramid that have been mapped. Radar scans show that this is merely a small part of what is below. These weren't paths for digging. They have always been there. It was apparent from the beginning that the pyramid was built both above and below Earth. Every shaft, hallway, and room followed a planned geometric pattern, which seemed more like arithmetic than architecture. The tunnels spread out, like veins, going east toward the light, west into the shadow, and others cutting diagonally under the core to link hidden rooms in perfect harmony. The pattern showed up when it was plotted on a map. A shocking truth. The tunnels looked like the stars. Their intersections matched the positions of Orion, the Pleiades, and Venus at important times in the sky, a long time ago. The builders have done more than just create a pyramid. They had made the sky and stars underneath the ground. This was cosmology made real, in
The air was dense and still. The walls shone with dampness and spoke with each step. As Marina's team moved forward, they saw that the tunnels had a slight curvature to them, bending at measured angles that seemed like they were directing sound and air. A single whisper may echo through several rooms, getting louder and more distorted until it sounded like it came from the ground. Later, experts in sound confirmed that these kinds of impacts really did happen because of what people did. The tunnels were a source of resonance, with the altering of frequencies that matched once human voices were the source. Clapping it in some, the chambers created echoes that sounded like the call of the holy Kuzel bird. The same thing happened at Chichen Itza. In other rooms, whispers turned into thunder. The pyramids were meant to do more than just hold things up. It was a live purpose. As they peeled back each layer, they learned more about the system grew better. The water systems that used to operate through the area were still working after 2,000 years. The gigantic dome-shaped rooms were controlling the air pressure to keep them from falling down. Such engineering was exactly as good as anything else in Egypt and Mesopotamia, a unique coming together of physics, spirituality, and art. Even so, the maze displayed the death, not. Marquina wrote in his later writings about the ceilings of doorways that had been covered with ancient bricks with symbols that were older than any Mesoamerican writing we know of. There was a mural in one of the rooms of a snake eating the sun, a divine cycle of death and rebirth, but maybe also a warning. His squad quickly felt the temperature drop. There were quick shakes and a very low buzzing that seemed to come from the stone. All of their compasses turned in directions. Their flashlights went out and their instruments stopped working. Researchers who work in the present day, archaeologists, but modern ones, went into the tunnels and the shafts that were just right for them. The equinoxes that happen every year, for a few minutes at a time. The sun shone directly on the nadir, and it was possible to see amazing engravings that had been hidden for hundreds of years. Like scientists, the people who built the tunnels had exact control over light, air, and sound. Still, we don't know what they are for. Did people use the tunnels for ritual changes, or were they cosmic observatories where the initiates might chart the stars below the Earth? Or a light. Some suggested a gadget for the mind that would make the vibrations stronger to help people change their consciousness. And then, in one of, archaeologists found something more odd in those caverns. A mural that had been concealed for hundreds of years and showed situations so advanced that they could change all we thought we knew about how ancient people thought. The mural that should not be there. In 1969, laborers clearing a tiny path down under the Great Pyramid of Cholula. The chamber hit a wall that was covered with delicate plaster. At first, it looked like any other thing. Another solid surface in the tangle of tubes. But as their light shone on it, subtle colors sparkled through years of dust. Red, black, and gold came out, showing a mural that was about 57 meters long. It would happen. The painting of the drinkers is called El Painting de los Babadores. It looks like it. Looks like a ceremony. Dozens of people sat in a circle and drank polka, which is a holy drink made from agave. Their faces were lively, laughing, serious, happy, a festival of life and ritual. But as archaeologists looked at the sequence, they saw something unexpected. The numbers started to change. Their bodies got longer across the panels. Marks on the skin changed into fractal patterns. The eyes became into bright orbs, some types. Completely vanished, their shapes changing into spirals, stars, and snakes. Some developed wings, while others became one with animals. Eagles, jaguars, amphibians. These were not random flourishes. The changes came after. A planned path, one step at a time, as if explaining a procedure, a change. Dr. Florencia Muller, the principal archaeologist, did not see it as art but teaching. In her field notes, which were later kept secret, she noted, "This mural is a visual manuscript. Each figure shows a different stage of change. What we are seeing is a ritual of transcendence documented in pigment." Chemical tests backed up what she said. The pigments had aeroline alkaloids in them. Ulioku glory seeds contained psychedelic chemicals, but blended in with. There were elements that looked like harm and acacia derivatives, which are plants that don't grow in, not just the Americas, but also Africa and the Middle East. There aren't any recognized trade routes that could explain their appearance in a 2000-year-old room under the center of Mexico. Some analysts said that pollution was one of the culprits, while others hinted at a more daring plot. The one that said Cholula was a place where diverse civilizations got together. A place of old knowledge that had been around for a long time before people started writing down history. But the most important, the mural's mystery was not in how it was made, but in how it was designed. When the mural was digitally, researchers in the 1970s rebuilt it and found a hidden rhythm. The pattern of change lined up with the positions of the stars, more specifically the movements of Venus, the planet that has always been linked to new life. As the night sky showed, each of the 10 pieces looked like the planets, if the mural were not only showing changes in the universe and people, but also teaching at the same time, not it, just for looks.
It was the first biochemistry textbook for Muller, the she. If the notion were accurate, it would imply that the architects of Cholula possessed an integration of chemistry and consciousness, and astronomy that was much more advanced than what we know from history. A study of the psyche shown via colors and shapes, but the formal institutions didn't say anything in response, just a few. The chamber was closed for preservation a few months after it was found. The foreign scientists' demands to. They were not allowed to access the site. Since then, the public has not been able to see the mural. People who had the chance to. People who saw it thought it was incredibly bizarre and not real. The air was. The plaster was making a gentle sound beneath the fake light and vibrating very lightly. Someone who was there. Later they added, standing still feels like being inside a thought that isn't yours. Before it. Others, El Moral de los Bebedores is a sign of a lost. A ceremony for going up to heaven. Some people think it's a hidden record. A blueprint to how to grow. The mind itself. And as scholars looked more closely at the sealed pyramids, they found more than murals in the chambers. They unearthed metal artifacts that were so advanced that they shouldn't exist not in the ancient world at all. Secrets that the earth wouldn't let go of. In the late 1960s, Ignacio Marquina and his colleagues had mapped out almost all of the tunnels that were known to be in Cholula's huge body. But the deeper they walked, the weirder the things they saw grew, as if the pyramid had been keeping secrets safe for another time. What they found next made it hard to tell the difference between archaeology and the impossible. In 1965, workers clearing a lower passage hit something solid. Not clay or stone, but metal. There was a cache of tools, chisels, rods, and other things buried in the hard ground.
Blades made from a silver-colored metal that was not known to pre-Columbian metallurgy. The edges shone and were unbelievably sharp, even after being buried for hundreds of years. Initially, experts presumed these were colonial incursions, but sediment analysis demonstrated otherwise. The layers. More than 1,000 years before the Spanish, people were sealing things, dating with carbon, validated the age of the waste around it, and metallurgical examinations found residues of nickel and chromium, two elements that were not known to exist. To the smelting of metals in ancient Mesoamerica. Within days, officials put the discoveries into groups. The government ordered the removal of antiquities, which were classed as sensitive materials. Marquina's public report merely talked about unidentifiable metal tools, but in private notes, he talked of a metal. Too beautiful to be hand-forged. It looks like it was poured in one piece using the lost tech. The Earth gave us additional wonders 2 years later. In 1967, a sealed. The compartment held ceramic discs with geometric rings and symbols carved into them. When impacted, the discs made a sound that was eerily clear, their voices echoing down the caverns. Later, acousticians discovered that the frequencies matched those utilized in modern sound treatment, which is exactly what they were looking for, the voice of a person. How could a society that was 2,000 years old have known so much about resonance physics? Exactly. Then something was found that changed everything. A stone that is fractured. A slab with carvings of people looking at the heavens via telescopes on it. The surface of the slab showed stars, eclipses, and the movement of planets. The old-fashioned. Archaeologists didn't think it was an artistic metaphor, but the others did. Thought it was evidence that Cholula could have been a place where people learned a lot. A school of higher learning in the past. The idea was made even stronger by the finding of what Marina called the Library of Stone, La Biblioteca de Pedra. A lot of blocks of stone that were carved and coded with math and astronomical symbols. Digital technologies was used to complete the analysis. Decades after the discovery showed that a lot of the patterns were like the fractal sequences we use today, geometric shapes that formal science did not recognize until the 20th century. If the sculptures are real artifacts, they would show that the people who made Cholula were more than only the people who built things back then. They had the most knowledge of astronomy, geometry, and other subjects, designed for sound. But every find was promptly covered up, and the objects were taken away. Reports were changed, and chambers were resealed. Officials claimed they would keep it, but whispers talked about something deeper that was the safeguarding of a story case that was too destructive to history. The formal end of Marquina's excavations was in 1971. Half of the tunnels were closed down by order of the government. He spoke about safety in his public remark. His private journal said something else. Some knowledge needs to be ready. People aren't ready. What kind of information may require such? Quiet. The new radar scans could be able to help. The scientists. People who have been excavating under the pyramid at the central axis have unearthed a huge room that is still closed off and is giving off metallic reflections and an organic signature which suggests it is fully preserved and has not been touched since ancient times. And when scientists eventually pointed their radar at the U, the center of the pyramid made even the most experienced experts faint. A room. So big and so perfect that it might change not only history, but also what we think about. The hidden university of mankind itself. By the time scientists in the 21st century directed their tools toward Cholula, Archaeology had come a long way from just using pickaxes and brushes. Ground penetrating. Radar, magnetometry, and 3D seismic imaging showed something that no one thought would happen. Underneath the huge maze of tunnels was an even deeper network that was symmetrical, huge and impossible to get right. The pyramid that you could see was just the tip of the iceberg. In the middle of. Those scans showed a huge empty space, an enclosed room that was almost 100 m wide. At first. Readings showed that there were metal structures mixed in with organic material, which is not a natural mixture. Anything that was. There had been built, not formed, buried there. Lamra del Corazon was the name given to it by researchers, the heart's chamber. This room didn't look like a shrine or a tomb. Its alignment implied intent, a point where all the tunnels came together as if. The pyramid's arteries supplied blood to one brain. The suggestion was shocking. Cholula might not have been a temple to the gods, but a place to store information. Soon there were signs that backed up that idea. The pieces that were dug up have engravings of stars, complicated number patterns, and clay shards covered in tiny glass glaze, a technology that was not known in ancient Mesoamerica. In a quiet way, researchers at Mexico's National Institute of Anthropology and History started dubbing Cholula La Universidad. Périda, the university that was lost. The theory wasn't crazy. Every building, the layer of the pyramid seemed to signify not only a new way of ruling, but also a new way of comprehending. The Olmi, the Zapotecs, the Mixtecs, and subsequently the Aztecs all added to it, making it bigger and keeping instead of getting rid of. Cholula seemed more like a conquering monument than a living archive, a place where many civilizations left their knowledge, expecting that it would last through layers of rock. Dr. Patricia Cabrera, a well-known archaeologist in Puebla, said it in a few words. This was not a place of worship. It was a school, a library that people lived in. Stone where sound, light, and shape made up the pages. LAR scans found the presence of recessed alcoves in a smaller sealed room. Some people assumed they were used to keep codices or instruments, while some said that their location matched the harmonic resonance nodes. It seems that the creators made the pyramid so that it could send messages through vibration itself as wisdom. Sound was incredibly significant in ancient Mesoamerica. Conch shells, flutes, and drums were not simply tools, but methods to tune into the universe's frequencies. Acoustic models of the pyramid showed that it was a big resonator. Every hallway was set up to send and receive sound. Chants and songs across the pyramid's subsurface arteries. It is knowledge, not written down, but rather generated with the power of vibrations, an oral script of physics and soul. Modern experiments verified the idea. Scientists discovered harmonic ratios that were the same as those that Pythagoras later wrote down when they used Marquina's blueprints from the 1940s to replicate the pyramid's tunnel frequency. This made it seem like the people who lived thousands of years ago knew about mathematical harmonics much earlier than we assumed. Finding the metallic grid under the stone floor with the interlocking lattice constructed in precise geometry was the most troubling piece of radar data from the heart's chamber. Some others felt the grid was only a symbol. Some thought it worked like an old energy pipe. But the truth is that no one is in a position to say, since the chamber is still shut up. And when scientists figured out what that last chamber might really hold, the scans showed structures that were too symmetrical to be natural, which not only interested them, but also scared them. The waking under Puebla. By 2018, there were more rumors concerning Cholula, too loud to not hear. What started off as an archaeological wonder was becoming something other completely. A riddle that put history to the test. Ground. Penetrating radar scans showed that there was a huge, undamaged chamber buried deep in the pyramid has been locked for more than 2,000 years. The data showed no mess or rubble, yet. Flawless geometry with straight edges, properly placed pillars, and 3 different layers that reflect. Metal, stone, and something that looks like it sprang from nature. In the beginning, experts were happy, but things changed when instruments directed at the spot started to fail. Magnetometers went up. It was like the earth under Cholula pulsed in slow, methodical beats, making it hard to predict. There was nothing buried there, inactive. It was busy. People in the area said they felt unusual things during the examinations. Vibrations beneath, static charges, and low hums coming up from the ground. After the sun goes down, authorities said they were just getting in the way. But seismic stations, nearby, recorded micropulses repeated every 42 seconds. The same amount of time, observed decades ago in Marquina's forgotten text about underground harmonics. Is it a coincidence or a connection? The government moved immediately. Digging. stopped. Officials said the new chamber was too unstable to explore, closed off the inner tunnels and put the area under close watch. 2. People in the area said it didn't look like preservation. It looked like it was contained. Before the shutdown, a few researchers let slip what they had witnessed. Lamar del Corazon is the name of the chamber. The heart chamber has two human-sized shapes resting next to each other, wrapped in a grid made of an unknown metal. There was a between them, a cylindrical device about a meter long that reflected radar in a way that was different from stone or metal. Some people dubbed it A. Some called it the core, while others called it the capsule. If this is true, the finding could change the whole idea of how people built things and buried them in the past. It seemed even stranger that the energy readings were continuous, rhythmic, and in sync with the frequencies of the resonance chambers at the summit of the pyramid. It's possible to assert that the pyramid and everything inside it were shaking. So was Cholula. A tomb or a machine. Maybe a resonance system was made to keep something alive, safe, or going. Alive, safe, or kept going. A leak from an unnamed engineer explained. This building is not a spectator. It responds. It seems like the pyramid has a breath. The saying spread swiftly and widely. In their accounts, the media termed it the breathing pyramid. The spiritual movements thought it was a coming into being, a consciousness that had been around longer than people. The people who didn't believe it laughed at it, although the timing was strange. Puebla had small shocks after radar scans, exactly under the pyramid where the epicenter was, and every tremor happened every 42 seconds. To this, Lamar del Corazon is still closed today. According to official accounts, digging will happen when it's safe to do so, but those who say no are hinting at far worse problems. The most recent scans showed that the electromagnetic patterns under the building were shifting, as if something below was changing. Some archaeologists think it's normal stress, while others don't say anything. Call it an answer. The secrets of the Great Pyramid of Cholula are only starting to come out, and more are on the way. The next thing could change all we thought we knew about the past. If you liked this story, please click like button. Leave your ideas and views in the comments below, and subscribe so you don't miss what we find next. And before you leave, click the next film on your screen to start looking for the secrets hidden behind our